Total. Cult.
Good dusk, you bicep fingerers, and welcome to the tingly delights of TotalCults.com. I'm James Trick.
I'm Dr. Gogol.
And today we're talking about...
Well, okay, because I was thinking earlier how, although we have a general interest in all cult film, you tend to know more about horror than I do.
Right.
I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm probably more experienced with action.
Right.
Than
True.
you are. So I thought what was interesting is obviously there's quite a lot of crossover. More recently, action does tend to invade horror and horror likewise. And yet I feel that they're not comfortable bedfellows. They don't fit very well, personally. I think really the only example of action horror that I think works really well is probably Blade.
Right. No, see, I didn't like Blade, so...
right, okay.
So your sole example of it working, I'd argue, doesn't work.
So can you think of any examples where it works? Is there anything that you do like?
No.
No?
No, not at all. You keep your stinking action sequences out of my horror films is basically my take on it.
Now, why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, for me, the Resident Evil movies, for me...
I was going to cite one of them as an example myself.
The distillation of everything that's wrong with it. I love the Resident Evil computer games. I think the computer games are fantastic. I think they're the early ones, before it got into sort of dodgy, racist action territory with the later one. But the first few where it was all limited camera angles, all suspense, all building stuff up, I thought were fantastic. I thought the movies were just cat-handed action movies. There's not even an attempt at scares in them. I mean, they're horror movies only in that they nick a bunch of sort of the visuals of what you'd expect from a horror movie. You know, you've got zombies in it, therefore it's a horror movie, which isn't actually true. There was a kids' TV show when I was growing up called The Drac Pack, which was a cartoon. And it had Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman in it. It was great, but just because it had Frankenstein, Dracula and the Wolfman, that did not mean it was a horror cartoon. No. It was not a cartoon that was setting out to terrify children. They were very amiable versions of Dracula and stuff. And so just because the Resident Evil movies have iconography that you'd associate with horror movies, they're no more horror movies than My Arm is. And My Arm isn't a horror movie.
It's not.
Just to clarify.
Slightly terrifying.
I've just realised I've stayed on topic for about 2 minutes.
Let's keep going. Because I was going to say the point in Resident Evil in which it loses me completely is when she kung fu's the dogs.
Right.
Which is a moment that should be terrifying, really rabid, Zoltan Hound of Dracula kind of terrifying, like horror, interspersed with current martial arts action, and that's immediately where it ceases being one or the other. For me personally, again, staying on topic, let's keep going, it's the fact that I think in an action film, the protagonist is empowered physically.
Right.
That they are less in threat because they're in sometimes controlled situations.
If you take that archetype and you whack it into a horror film, the whole dynamic falls apart. Yeah. My God, we've actually made a point. You made a point.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I'm so proud of you.
We should probably,
I'm going to try and catch up now. I'm going to try and strive to make a point by the end of this podcast.
Should we take a break first?
I think so. Possibly a pint and a cigarette might be called for it. No. Let's. Okay. So interesting point about empowerment. But I don't think the atmosphere is conducive either. I don't think you can, if you put action elements, you can get away with some degree of action elements. I mean, you could actually argue that certain sequences in Evil Dead and stuff like that actually take some of the elements of an action movie. But also, just because something's high octane. But you're right. It's the principle of the thing.
If the hero is, for example, I've cited that I found the remake of The Hills of Eyes quite difficult, and we've talked about this elsewhere. But I find the latter half of the film, where the character, without spoiling it for everyone, takes the initiative, I enjoy. It's still not technically an action film because he's walking into something where he's completely out of his depth. He doesn't have the tools which do it. He's just the revenge motive. Whereas if he knew he could go in there and he's adept at gun use and can jump through the windows and stuff like that, then it would cease to be scary. It would just be an action film, but with weird creatures in it.
So you need the hero or heroine needs to be needs to be at a physical disadvantage in order for it to function as a horror movie, and possibly they need to be at a physical, if not an advantage, at least on an equal footing for it to work as an action film.
Characters in
a horror movie
need to be able to keep up with the villains. They need to be able to move the action along intentionally. So it's not they've accidentally ran away from this person or something. They need to be in some degree of control.
But there is also this sort of archetype in action movies where the all-powerful, all-conquering hero gets depowered, for want of a better... the amount of time in RoboCop, in all RoboCop movies, that RoboCop actually spends broken. It's like, he spends more time broken than my fucking washing machine, which is, for me, is disappointing. And I don't... That seems to be a trope that gets used by people writing action scripts. Superman as well. Superman Forever, because obviously they need to find the way of knocking his feet out from under him.
But that's the thing. It's a moment, whereas in a horror film, it's constant.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the more traditional action film. Is the protagonist's gun only runs out of ammunition at the least at a specific time. He's firing thousands of bullets out of a tiny 6-shooter revolver, but he only runs out of bullets when it's relevant. And then he'll have a knife that you can throw into the forehead, or he'll knock something in a net full of sandbags will fall on the person or something. It's just set up for a more elaborate way that he can regain control. Whereas in horror, it's just about how can they escape from this with their lives, not with getting the upper hand, just how can they continue to survive. Now, curiously, another example of a film that I do think works, which I mentioned to you earlier, is Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
Yeah, which I haven't seen.
But I think primarily because we set up the martial arts element first, and then once the vampires arrive, even though they know martial arts, they're still out of their depth because they now have to deal with the horror element. Whereas something like Blade or Resident Evil or something, there is this kind of thing, they seem adept at fighting monsters. Whereas in this one, and the death count in Seven Golden Vampires is quite high. I think it feels like they still remain unable to deal with this thing. It is about survival more than control of the situation.
I don't know how much of it's cultural as well. That I picked up years and years and years ago. I picked up a Hong Kong action movie that, according to the box, was called Ninja Vampire Busters, but according to the screen, it was called Vampire Buster. Okay. And then I think if you look it up in guides, it's got various different titles as well. But
with the term Buster in it?
Well, pretty much. I assume it was...
and it's nothing to do with the Phil Collins?
Or the comic.
Yes. They're not all the same thing?
No, okay. They're different kind of thing. But it seems that certainly some sections of Hong Kong cinema are a lot happier mixing action and, again, it's horror archetypes. You've got lots of wire fu vampires and skippy vampires and all this sort of stuff, and it seems to mix a lot better, and I enjoy that sort of flick a lot more. I mean, I didn't get irritated watching Ninja Vampire Busters in the way that I got irritated watching Resident Evil.
Seventh Curse.
Seventh Curse. Would you care to summarise Seventh Curse for if our listener hasn't seen it?
It's like watching... I don't think I can sum it up.
No.
Because it's a film that is not more than the sum of its parts. It is just a series of batshit sequences, almost irrelevant to each other.
There's a killer fetus that flies out of a cloak and bites people. I remember bits of it. I remember
fired by the main villain, who's been voiced by somebody who's decided to go with the no doubt New Zealand voice actor doing it. The guy's one. I know. I'm just going to screech as high pitched as I can.
Someone eats a nipple to cure a curse.
Something like that.
And there's a blood curse that results in legs exploding. Yeah.
They obviously had some gunshot effect stuff lying around, so I just thought that'll count as a disease.
Yeah. And it's got Chow Yun-fat, who's in it at the beginning and then disappears for the whole movie and then pops up at the end again, doesn't it?
But he's not the two-gun toting. He's just a kind of... I don't know what he does.
I thought he was a supernatural expert who does pop up at the end with a rocket launcher.
Yeah. Oh yes. There's a Die Hard sequence for the first half an hour in the hospital, which again I don't know what relevance to.
It also has my personal favourite subtitle of all time, which is when he's showing her around or discussing supernatural artifacts that he's discovered on his travels, and the subtitle just comes up, and these are toes chopped down by spacemen, which is, I think, I think one of the greatest subtitles of all time.
It is an awesome work and well worth checking out. Further east, that genre mixing seems to work because it's joyous.
Yeah,
it's an attempt to have fun with it. I suppose even if you go as far as Bollywood, where they just tend to throw genres in every 5 minutes.
Absolutely. There seems to be no sort of real genre barriers in Bollywood. They can just sort of chuck the whole stuff in. It's like a jambalaya, where a dish where anything goes, and that's kind of cool. And the audience kind of expects it, I think, for Bollywood movies as well.
Whereas over here, in an attempt to, because we take our genre stuff, I think, very seriously in terms of trying to construct worlds we believe in, by essentially mixing those two genres together, we undo what makes them work, and they cease to be that pleasurable in any sense. Obviously, this is personal opinion. They appear to be very popular.
Yes.
But I find that they're neither scary nor as exciting as I'd like them to be.
No. So it falls between two stools.
Yes. To form one larger super stool.
Yes. Yes.
In today's story, Gogol asked for permission for something he very much wanted to do. When that permission was denied to him, he was faced with a choice. And it's these kind of choices that define what kind of a person we are. So when you're next faced with a choice between something you want to do that you've been forbidden to do, and perhaps trying to see how many golf balls you can insert into your rectum through a clear plastic tube up until the point you howl to an unjust and non-existent God for release from this earthly domain, think about this episode and the lessons you've learned. Until next time, please don't forget to follow us on Twitter @TotalCults. Check out our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/something or other that nobody's ever bothered to actually sign up to, and on our website at totalcults.com, where you can also buy our book so that you can read this on planes and impress people with how erudite and wise you are, and make them wonder about what you do with Perspex tubes and, I was about to say tennis balls then, that would have been wrong. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.